this is where it all began. Crowned in 1953, Queen Elizabeth II would go on to become the longest reigning monarch in British history, surpassing her great-great-grandmother Victoria by spending over 7 remarkable decades on the throne.
Well, a formidable legacy, really. Enormous impact, but of a very quiet nature. Has an influence on British and Commonwealth politics just by being there.
Born in London in 1926, Elizabeth Alexandra Mary was the first child of the Duke and Duchess of York. Her father George VI became king a decade later after the shock abdication of her uncle Edward VIII. At 18, she insisted on joining the war effort, training as a mechanic in the Auxiliary Territorial Service in 1945. Elizabeth fell in love and married naval officer Philip Mountbatten and had Charles and Anne. But while on tour in Kenya, the 25-year-old learned of her beloved father's sudden death.
I declare before you all that my whole life, whether it be long or short, shall be devoted to your service and to the service of our great imperial family to which we all belong.
Her own personal happiness, though, wouldn't have been a high priority given the life that she knew was coming.
A life full of challenges for a young woman taking her place on the world stage, navigating her royal duties alongside being a mother to 4 young children, with the addition of Princes Andrew and Edward. It soon became obvious she would be different to those who reigned before her. She was more personable, the first to start the royal walkabouts, greeting the crowds rather than waving from afar, the gloved centrepiece of more than 100 royal tours. But there was also time for her many personal passions, a love for the great outdoors, particularly horse riding. She owned hundreds of racehorses through the years, and then, of course, there were the corgis.
Mother, daughter.
But when the private lives of the royals became tabloid fodder for the public, the monarch's pain was clear.
1992 is not a year on which I shall look back with undiluted pleasure.
The 40th anniversary of the Queen's ascension was marred when Prince Andrew and Sarah, the Duchess of York, separated, Princess Anne divorced, and the fairy tale that was Charles and Diana evaporated.
In the words of one of my more sympathetic correspondents, it has turned out to be an annus horribilis.
Diana's tragic death a few years later delivered a hard lesson. The Queen was criticised for staying at Balmoral in Scotland, while thousands grieved outside Buckingham Palace in London. Under pressure, she soon returned to the capital.
So what I say to you now, as your Queen and as a grandmother, I say from my heart.
We're, pleased she's back and we feel better now.
She tackled it head on because modernizing and changing was going to be essential to that institution, and that was the job that needed to be done at that time.
Staying relevant remains one of the toughest challenges for the royal family. Unafraid of cameos, her sense of humour has regularly been on display.
Good evening, Mr. Bond.
Good evening, Your Majesty.
A showstopper at the 2012 London Olympics.
Oh my goodness.
She commanded the screen yet again in the frightening early months of the COVID-19 pandemic, making a special television address. Her resilience and calm reassurance in troubled times will be sadly missed.
I want to reassure you that if we remain united and resolute, then we will overcome it.
But in recent years, it's her family she's been battling to unify. Her grandson leaving public duties, more unwanted publicity as internal ructions became tabloid headlines. And then there's Prince Andrew, the Queen's second son, vilified for his long-time friendship with sex offender Jeffrey Epstein. And while the royal entity has taken a hit, through it all, the Queen's reputation and support has remained largely intact. Tens of thousands of people turning up to celebrate 70 years on the throne. But here, during the 4-day Jubilee, questions around the Queen's health intensified. Relying on a walking aid on day 1, she pulled out of events the next day after experiencing discomfort, watching tributes from afar.
She has an extraordinarily strong faith, and that faith has carried her pretty much all of her life.
This is now an end of an era. Last year she lost her husband of more than 73 years, Prince Philip, the Duke of Edinburgh, the man she described as her strength and stay. Queen Elizabeth II, who in turn has been a strength and stay to many, now mourned by people around the world who can't remember a life without her.